Are you ready to boldly go into these 12 months of 2019? I'm Adrian Bridgebassi, the travel journalist and editor of the digital magazines Vacay Network and Vacay.ca. And joining me is Jim Byers, travel journalist and senior editor at Travel Pulse Canada. And you're listening to the Vacay Network travel podcast sponsored by Tripsy. For the next 50 minutes or so, we will be going at slightly less than warp speed to provide you with our picks for top trends for the coming year, as well as the best places you should go in 2019. Now, my allusions to Star Trek here are for a reason. Space is going to be a very big topic in 2019. So, Jim, my friend, how would you like to be the first journalist to report on the first tourist flight to space?
Do I get to report on it from the ground, or do I have to go up and go through all of that?
Oh, you got to do it like a pro, man. You got to go experience it.
I'll do it. It's once in a lifetime sort of thing. I'm not big on that sort of thing, but I mean, my goodness, to be able to have a chance to do something like that, you'd have to be pretty crazy to turn it down and figure, well, what the heck? If you're going to go, that's a good way to go.
So we've got
that'd be pretty cool. I mean, I was actually down in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, just south of Daytona, about 3 weeks ago. And I saw a SpaceX rocket going.
Right.
The first time I'd ever seen one. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's three companies, not just one. There's three companies planning space tourism for next year. We've got SpaceX, that's Elon Musk's company. Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic, and Jeff Bezos of Amazon. They're launching or planning to launch Blue Origin. So the question is, if you had to go on one of those three, say now that we've established you're going, which one would you choose?
I'll take Virgin. I think Richard Branson's got a little bit more style than Musk. So
yeah, well,
I don't know about Bezos, but I think he'd have pretty good drinks on board.
So well, that's you're thinking of that way. I'm thinking about who's most likely to come back. So,
there is that. Yeah.
So I two things. I would choose Bezos because he's got more money than the other two guys. So you figure he's got some more security stuff he can put in there, and
he's very good on returns too.
Exactly, he's very good at returns. And first and foremost is I want to be on the flight where one of those guys is going to be on it, because you figure if you're going setting people up to space, I have a lot more confidence if you're on the plane too. Probably coincidence that the technology has advanced at this stage, but this is a big year in when we're talking about space stuff, right? It's the 50th anniversary of something pretty major.
A very big thing, yeah. I mean, it was 1969 when Neil Armstrong and company from Apollo set foot on the moon for the first time, and that's a pretty huge thing. I mean, you see a lot of things in the travel biz, somebody celebrating a 30th anniversary or 45th or something, but 50 is a pretty big deal. And considering, in the early 60s, it was considered a bit of a pipe dream. And thanks to, JFK and a lot of other folks and NASA, of course, and a lot of money, Americans were able to put a man on the moon in 1969. So we've got, 50-year anniversaries going on all over the world, but especially, of course, in the U.S. So, I mean, there's the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum is doing a big, I think it's a 5-day celebration, Adrian. There's the U.S. Space Rocket Center in Huntsville, Alabama is doing a parade and old car shows from the 60s and rocket launches. People, I think, can even bring their own rockets and fire them up, hopefully not all at the same time. Kennedy Space Center will be doing its thing, of course, and of course NASA.
Right.
There's also a Neil Armstrong Museum, Air and Space Museum in Ohio, where he was born. So there's certainly a lot of things going on around the U.S.
So lots of stuff, and one quirky place to put on your list if you are interested in this topic is Flagstaff, Arizona. It's where Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, the three who were on the Apollo mission to the moon, did a lot of their training. Flagstaff's Lunar Legacy includes you can actually get in some of the vehicles that they rode around in the moon, and there are craters that were similar to what they felt they were going to expect on the moon. So they were training there. You can kind of walk in their footsteps, and but you have the benefit of having gravity, which is a pretty neat amenity when you're thinking about just going on a holiday, not trying to change human history. In terms of other trends that are more maybe terrestrial, what do you think for 2019?
Yeah, well, I think we're seeing a great growth. I talked to travel agents, Adrian, and they're still seeing a very solid growth in multi-generational travel. Mm-hmm. Older travelers like traveling with their grandkids. They have the disposable income. They're fitter than they used to be maybe 20 or 30 years ago, and they're able to do, walking tours on the trek in Spain, or just something a little bit smaller, skiing trip. So I think they like that. I've read studies where millennials say they would rather travel with their parents and their grandparents than some of their friends, and maybe they want their grandparents to pay for the trip. I don't know.
Maybe, but well, I think this whole the big growth of this last decade was the Airbnb and those major. You can get a massive house, share for a family, which kind of makes that multi-generational travel more.
Very much so, yeah. So I think those are big things, and obviously the eco thing, eco travel and responsible travel are both big.
Huge,
I had a cup of coffee in Toronto recently with the new head of Intrepid Travel for North America, and they're putting an even stronger emphasis than they've already have. They have approval from agencies that deal with it, responsible travel, and they're certified in that standpoint. So certainly Intrepid is expanding more on the eco-friendly travel sort of things. G Adventures, a Canadian company, obviously is very big on that sort of thing, and talks about responsible travel and not, let's not destroy the earth, let's not impact other cultures too much. So that's certainly a trend that will be continuing.
Yeah, for sure. So a couple of things that I see happening this year. First, China. Jim, don't know if you know this, but only 8.7% of Chinese people have passports.
That in a way that almost surprised me that it's that high, Adrian. I guess having been there myself once or twice, and it wasn't that long ago that Chinese visitors were almost not even allowed to leave the country. Then when they did, they had to go on these strictly regulated tours. Now it's a situation where it's a lot easier for them to do that.
Right.
So the actual 8.7%, although a fairly low percentage number, is, as you know, a huge actual number of people. What is it, 100?
It's over about 120 million people. The thing with that 120 million people, they are the elite. They're the people connected to government. They're the very wealthy. And what's happened is they've shaped the perception of the Chinese traveler in the tourism industry, where the tourism industry is shifting to doing a lot of catering to very wealthy Chinese travelers. But now what happened, and I was just in China a few weeks ago, and when I was there, two things happened. One, the government announced that for the first time they're going to allow foreign companies to come in and sell trips to the Chinese people leaving the country. Up until this point, it's been dominated by Ctrip, the Chinese travel agency based in Beijing. And the other thing that happened was that they said they were actually going to issue more passports to more people. It's still going to be very limited, but what that's going to do is now you're going to get a massive amount of travelers this year, probably more next year, from China that will not be the big spenders. They're probably going to be more like your typical Western traveler, where they might be looking for more budget options. And more than that, they're probably looking for more local experiences, not somewhere that feels like China abroad. And I think that's going to be disruptive in the travel industry.
Oh, it'll be great for the smaller hotel industry and people that don't run the Four Seasons of the world, but just a little bit more mom and pop oriented hotels and bars and restaurants all across North America and Canada, for sure.
Right. And the other trend I see happening, and it kind of goes counter to what you said, but I'm only basing this based on that the predictions are this is going to be a difficult financial year, possibly heading towards a recession. And the last time this happened, the word staycation came into our lexicon, and I think we might see a recurring of that. And there's lots more we could discuss. Mobile technology is really changing how people travel. Foreign travel to the U.S. has slumped. It may continue to slump because of the politics, as you mentioned.
Yep.
Yeah, I know. It's
well, we're not going into.
We're not going to talk politics, but it is having an impact. But now we're going to talk specifically about the future of our listeners and the travel decisions they should make for 2019, and that's based on the advice that you and I are going to give them. So let's talk about the 2019, not really a major event year, but you've selected a few things that are happening that are big deals, even though there's not an Olympics this year.
Yeah, there's not Olympics, but there's not a men's World Cup, but there is a women's World Cup, and certainly if you're Canadian, that's a good thing because our women's team is one of the top 2 or 3 teams and considered a definite medal favorite and potentially even a gold medal winner. So that tournament's going to be in the middle of the year in France. So that's certainly something that Canadian sports fans want to keep an eye on.
Another reason to go to France.
Yeah. Also over in, like we need another one. Also over in that neck of the woods, this year, on a more somber note, does mark the 75th anniversary of the D-Day invasion of Europe by the Allied forces. So that's a pretty big deal. One interesting one that probably a lot of people know about is that next year, or this year, sorry, 2019, marks the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots for gay rights in New York City. And what I didn't realize until recently when I was doing some research on that story is that it was also in 1969 when Pierre Trudeau signed legislation, I think basically that eradicated the legislation that banned homosexuality in Canada. Mm-hmm. So that's obviously something worth celebrating. I understand there'll be a lot of pride events going on, obviously around the world, but specifically in New York City and Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, and other Canadian cities to celebrate, a pretty major event in our history.
Yeah, major event and a demographic that's having more and more impact on the tourism budgets around the world.
Absolutely, so. Yeah, good point. Very good point.
You're listening to the Vacay Network Travel Podcast, brought to you by Tripsy, the new travel trivia app where players answer multiple choice questions and earn great rewards on airfare, hotels, restaurants, lots of other stuff. I'm Adrian Bridge-Massey, and with me is Jim Byers. We are your co-hosts. We are also part of the ownership group of Tripsy. Starting very soon, just a couple of weeks more actually, Tripsy will launch, and it has some fabulous prizes, including a VIP experience in Curacao in the Caribbean. That includes round-trip airfare for 2, 5 nights of a luxury hotel stay, $500 cash, lots of good stuff. Check tripsy.com for details. That's TRIPPZY.com. Okay, Jim, back to you. It's time. What we're going to do now is pick one spot in the Western Hemisphere and one in the Eastern Hemisphere that we recommend. So, you go first. Give us your first choice.
I will start with the Western Hemisphere, closer to home for us and Canadians and Americans listening. I really love Anguilla. I'd heard a lot about the beaches, Adrian. We went a couple years ago, took a little short ferry ride, maybe 15, 20 minutes from St. Martin or St. Martin over to Anguilla. The beaches are even more beautiful than they advertised. I've never seen anywhere in the world longer, wider sand beaches than what they have in Anguilla. Lovely water. You go on the north side, it's a little bit rougher, a bit more exposed. South side is a little bit more of the Caribbean side of things, a bit more protected. Just terrific. They did have some hurricane damage, substantial damage from 2017, but that's been almost a year and a half now. So the major resorts are opening again. The Four Seasons is open and terrific property. I don't think they had much damage. Cuisinart Resort did have some damage, but has reopened most of its property. It's a great beach, really fun spot. There's a great beach bar just down the road from that's fun and very casual and feel. So although Anguilla does have some luxury resorts, Adrian, there are also some affordable mom and pop places. Great food, really nice people. So that's a really good spot to go in 2019. Yep. And, not only do you have a great vacation, but you're helping some people out. I had a pretty rough time with things after the hurricane.
Yeah, really, really important to mention. And Anguilla is one of the places that's a Tripsy partner. So you can remember all of what Jim told you, because a lot of that shows up in the trivia questions on Tripsy, and you'll win some rewards that can get you down there. My choice, and I'm going to go to the Eastern Hemisphere first, and so we're talking the Prime Meridian, basically east of London, and we're going to go far east. My selection for where you should go in that part of the world is Tokyo, and Japan in general. And, we know Tokyo, if you've been following the news, had a bad start. There was a terrorist attack on New Year's Eve, but it's still one of the safest cities in the world. It's also, in 2020, it's going to be hosting the Summer Olympics. And, Jim, you know this. You've covered lots of Olympics in your day.
Yeah.
As cities gear up towards the Olympics, there's a lot of buzz, a lot of energy. People are so proud. So much civic pride comes out. And they want to cater to the traveler. They want to reinforce all of the good things that they expect the world to be saying about them. And plus, you're not dealing with the mega crowds that you will in 2020. Things aren't priced up as they would be post 2020 either. So
Right.
you're able to get a lot of benefits, beat the crowds, like, feel the buzz and the energy and the excitement. That's my Eastern selection. What's yours?
Okay, I'm going to go east. Go east, young man. So I'll take New Zealand, a little further south, maybe around the same longitude. I'm not sure, but certainly further south. New Zealand's a beautiful country. I mean, one of the main things, as we all know, Adrian, is the sheer variety of New Zealand is astonishing. The north is near tropical, 100-mile beach, I think it's called, is the one at the very north end of the island. Just tremendous, long, lonely coastlines. Great fun city in Auckland with, great coffee scene, great food, wineries nearby on Waiheke Island. You can go down to the South Island, and the variety is even more astonishing. Kayaking in the Marlborough Sounds, wine tasting, down to Christchurch. And the fjords over on the west coast around west coast of New Zealand down around Milford Sound, pretty astonishing. And it's not a cheap place to get to, and it's not a cheap destination, known as a cheap destination. But considering how badly the Canadian dollar is getting hammered by the U.S. greenback, we're 10% ahead of the Kiwis. So New Zealand is actually a pretty good place to go with the Canadian dollar right now.
Yeah, for sure. And really, there's lots of places we could put on this list, whether the currency helps you or not.
Oh, sure, Thailand, lots of places.
Yeah, Lima, Peru is one I've picked out. It hosts the Pan Am Games this year in a wonderful city. England is actually getting a new and much needed trains for their national rail service. That's going to help improve their tourism there. Tiny Liechtenstein, also in Europe, is introducing a 75-kilometer walking trail that will include some augmented reality that you can access on their app, and that sounds really cool for a hiking experience.
Pretty much go around the whole country?
Pretty much, 75 kilometers, yeah. So we've got Jim's 2 picks for where to go. So my Western Hemisphere choice is the Arctic, which you could do on the east, I suppose. But I think the Canadian Arctic and Greenland are probably where you'll have a really good experience. I had a wonderful trip last year with a company called Adventure Canada, and it's one of those places that really leaves an indelible impression on you. For some of the reasons that Jim mentioned about sustainable tourism and environmental tourism, you can really see the effects of climate change happening there. And it's also one of those few places left where you can really feel like you've escaped, you've gone somewhere, and kind of reminds you don't necessarily need to go to space to feel like you are exploring somewhere unique and even alien to you. You've been listening to the Vacay Network Travel Podcast, sponsored by TripC. For my co-host Jim Byers, this is Adrian Bridge-Bassey wishing you a wonderful new year and safe and pleasurable journeys around the world and beyond if you choose. Thanks.